Okay, this week, Colby Covington has started a online war with everyone's most hated MMA fighter, Garry. Plus, this week's UFC card is so god-awful. Let's just talk about Colby Covington and Garry instead. I'm not kidding, okay? This week's UFC card might as well be called the Contender Series Episode 2. There's so many first-timers on this card, and then it is headlined by Rose, put the commentary team to sleep during a pay-per-view, Namajunas. Honestly, who cares? If you make a prediction video about that, it will tank your channel. Okay, so Colby Covington versus Garry. Far more interesting. Let's look at this. The main thing that we're going to get into on this video is the fact that Colby Covington is ducking Garry publicly. What he is doing is calling him out very loudly and very clearly, but he's laying down all this stuff around it so that when that fight doesn't happen and doesn't fall through, Colby Covington can get on there on Fox News in front of all of his fans and say, I tried to call him out, but he didn't follow the stipulations, man. I had stipulations. This is all just posturing so that Colby Covington can eventually back out of this fight. We're going to look at it a little bit more closely in today's video. And it's really, really wild to me also to see the amount of Colby Covington fans that are out there, the amount of Colby Covington meat riders that are out there that cannot see this is very clearly Colby Covington ducking Garry in a way where he can say he tried to get that fight, but it just fell through and that it's Ian's fault that this fight isn't happening. There's a very simple way to make this fight happen. We're going to look at it in this video. Okay, how did this all start, right? If you're watching this, you probably know, but let's just streamline it so it's in this video very quickly. Let's recap it. Colby Covington, extremely controversial figure in our sport, started calling out Garry in just the most Colby Covington way ever. These pre-recorded little scripted lines that he was fumbling over, it was just classic Covington. But what is so funny about this, right, is Colby Covington, he's playing a character. You know it, I know it, Colby knows it, everyone knows it by now. Colby Chaos Covington is just this character, this cringe lord, like Henry Cejudo, the king of cringe, when Henry decides to turn it on. What is so good about this is that Garry responded the exact same way. Like Garry matched him on that level of cringeness. But Colby's playing a character and Garry was just being Garry. Like, I'm sure his wife wrote the lines for him, but like to Garry, the way the world works, right, is cringe man makes cringe video. Mum writes lines for me. I say lines. I do good job. Like, and that is 100% a streamlined level of thought for Garry. And he came back and tried to out cringe the cringe king without playing a character, just by being Garry. It was awful to watch, just so awful to watch. And then Colby comes back with this third video, which was, I have to say, you know, for as cringy as Colby is and as much as like I struggle to get into it, the third video is like, there are some funny lines in there, right? So we've now got this back and forth going between the two of them. We're going to play a little bit of the third video in this video because I don't want to play all three. It's just, honestly, it's too much to listen to. It's too much cringe for me. What sucks about all of this, and the fact that Colby is putting these ridiculous stipulations in there that Ian is not going to take, and we'll go through them one by one, that Colby's put these ridiculous stipulations in there that Garry is just not going to take, and then Colby can back out of this fight and say he doesn't want it, is that fight is a fun fight to make. It's the right fight to make right now, right? Like, Colby and Ian, they've lined up perfectly in the rankings. Colby hasn't got a single win anywhere in the ranked division, so he needs someone like Garry to step up and take him out. The press conference would be so fun because Colby would just be playing to the crowd in that character way that he is. The crowd would just be booing the hell out of Garry, and then the actual fight would happen. And, you know, I struggle with the amount of people that are still Colby Covington fans, right? Like, what we just saw against Leon Edwards was pathetic. It was nothing short of pathetic. It was one of the worst performances from a professional MMA fighter I've ever seen from Colby Covington. And if this was a one-off, you could almost be like, come on, Dougie, that's a bit unfair. You know, Colby had a bad night. But to me, it wasn't a one-off, okay? Go rewatch Colby Covington's rematch with Kamaru Usman. He did the exact same thing in the first 10 minutes of that fight. He was the same Colby Covington that went in there with Leon Edwards. So once is an excuse, twice to me is a bit of a pattern. And when we're not, doing our prediction videos and guessing about how our mates and how you should gamble on the sport, you go back and you watch tape and you see these fighters' recent performances and you go, this fighter sucks at that, this fighter sucks at this. Well, if you watch Colby Covington's last two fights, he sucks at fighting. He's too scared to engage. He hasn't got that dog in him anymore. Which means you would have Garry, who is there to style and to pop shots and to picky shots, doing what he needs to do against a perfect opponent, someone who's just going to stand there and take it, which is funny the way that Colby refers to Ian with how the fight would actually play out. Colby would just stand there and take whatever Ian's giving to it. To be certain, that fight would not happen. And the fight is not going to happen because of these stipulations that Colby is putting down. And it blows my mind that fans still can't see it, that Colby fans still can't see it. Colby Covington's last performance, we were just talking about it, we all just saw it against Leon Edwards. And then he went on Fox News and literally said that there was a conspiracy against him and that is why he didn't win the fight. I mean, Colby didn't even try and then actually goes on something like Fox News and then talks about a conspiracy about why he didn't win according to the judges. The whole man's life is a meme, and these call-outs are just another meme, and I just cannot believe that fans are still falling for his tricks. The kind of people that still fall for Covington's tricks are the reason why they got away with what they did in 2020. And the fact that people just want to believe Colby and are making videos and making comments like this fight is going to happen, it really does blow my mind, okay? And then you've got Garry's response to it, right? Just as cringe. When this fight is so easy to make, one phone call to Hunter Campbell, one phone call to Dana White, one phone call to the UFC, and this fight is over. It is done. It's so easy to make as a co-main event 5-rounder for any pay-per-view. If Conor McGregor is coming back, you could put this character that they're trying to make the next Conor McGregor, Garry, versus Colby Covington as the co-main event of a Conor McGregor pay-per-view. This fight could be done at an arena, any arena, as a fight night main event. This is one of the easiest fights in the world to make. But instead, we've got this fake cringe thing happening online that we're all watching intently, acting like that this fight is going to happen, when what these videos are doing is setting up every reason why this fight isn't going to happen. If this fight was going to happen, all it takes is one phone call, not all of this posturing. Colby's doing all of these stipulation things just to keep his name in the media. He's brilliant at it. It's what Colby does. It's so good, but it's just a gimmick, right? It's keeping him in the news cycle for the next 6 months. And then when the fight doesn't happen and it falls out, he can do another media tour talking about how it's Ian's fault. That keeps him in the news cycle for another 6 months. It's just pushing him forward, right? Let's listen to Colby's first stipulation, okay? Number one.
You're about to take your way out of this fight, Junior. So here it is one last time. Agree to the stipulations. Stipulation number one, turn on the comments.
This one, turn your comments back on, Garry. If I was Garry, right? If another man was telling me what to do to get into a fight with him, when it is perfect to make that fight happen. If Colby Covington was, like, number one, my comments wouldn't be turned off. But if another man was telling me what to do, I would just pick up my phone, set it to record, put down someone else's phone on record, and I would call the UFC brass and just say to them, Colby Covington, for me, it's a yes. Any arena, anywhere, anytime, wherever you want it, it's a yes from my end. Hunter, is that, yeah? Hunter, you can hear me? It's a yes. Colby Covington versus Dougie, Colby Covington versus Garry, it's a yes. I'd record that, and then I'd put it online as my response to Colby's cringe thing, okay? Stipulation number two, right?
Stipulation number two, record Layla begging. Stipulation.
This one, how are you going to let another man tell you that your wife needs to beg them? This is the biggest one of, if Colby actually sticks to these stipulations, this is the biggest one of this fight is never happening. Whose wife is going to beg another man for this? Who is going to even listen to this, right? Again, if this was happening to me, I would just take my camera phone, walk into the bedroom, point it at my wife, and get her to tell him to go and fuck himself. That's what I would say, and that he's too much of a fucking pussy to fight my husband. That's how that would go down. And then once again, I would release the video or the audio clippings of me telling the UFC that I'm 100% down to fight this guy anywhere, anytime. And just point out the fact that he is being a cringe lord and openly ducking you without ducking you. That's how this fight can actually happen. And then the third one.
Stipulation number 3, agree to the MyBookie promo and we gotta fight. Otherwise, I'm fighting someone higher ranked this summer and you're doing what you do best, sitting there and watching all the action.
I mean, after you've responded to the first two in the way that you could respond to the first two, it's just dead. It's just over. That's it. The fight is done. He either takes the fight or he doesn't take the fight, and it's all 100% on him. So, if you're one of the people that are online, on Twitter, on the Instagram comments, and you're talking about how Colby ate, how this fight is sick, how this fight is going to happen, how Ian Garry's too scared to do any of these things, I cannot believe that you are actually falling for this crap. I can't believe it, that people are falling for this crap. It is so obvious that Colby Covington is trying to get Ian Garry's name off of his list and pray to the MMA gods that he gets that Wonder Boy fight so he can just safely hold Wonder Boy against the cage for 15 minutes. That is the fight that Colby Covington wants. That is the fight that Colby Covington is trying to get. He is trying to make it look like Ian Garry is turning him down and he's not scared to fight Ian Garry. Let me know down there in the comments, if Colby Covington sent this video to you and you were an MMA fighter, how would you react to it? If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down there. And of course, I'll see you all in the next one.